There's a nerve running from the base of your skull, down through your throat, your heart, and your gut. And when someone you love dies, that nerve is the first part of your body to know it. Long before your mind has accepted the loss, your vagus nerve has already begun to change how it fires. This is not a metaphor. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the human body, and it is the primary communication line between your brain and your internal organs. Researchers studying grief at institutions including Harvard Medical School have found that acute bereavement produces measurable changes in vagal tone within days of a loss. Vagal tone is essentially a measurement of how well this nerve regulates your heart rate, your breathing, and your digestion. When grief strikes, that regulation falters, and the result is something survivors describe in almost identical language across cultures. A literal ache in the chest, a tightness in the throat, a hollow feeling in the stomach. These are not figures of speech, they are vagal signatures of loss. To understand why, we need to go to the level of the cell, because this is where the real story of grief is written. The vagus nerve is wrapped in a sheath of cells that conduct electrical impulses using a process called saltatory conduction, where signals leap rapidly between gaps in the nerve's insulation. Under normal conditions, this allows your brain and your heart to stay in constant, fast communication. A feedback loop scientists call the heart-brain axis. But grief disrupts this axis. Studies referenced by the American Heart Association have linked acute grief to something called stress cardiomyopathy, sometimes known as broken heart syndrome, in which a surge of stress hormones temporarily stuns the heart muscle itself. The vagus nerve, which is supposed to act as a brake on the body's stress response, becomes overwhelmed. It cannot apply the brakes fast enough, and so the heart races, the chest tightens, and the body experiences grief not as an emotion, but as a physical event. This goes deeper than anything a 7-minute doctor's appointment will ever explain to you, and deeper than anything a wellness article will tell you to breathe through. Your doctor does not have time to walk you through your heart-brain axis. A magazine will tell you grief is hard. Neither will tell you what is actually happening in your body, mechanism by mechanism. So let's go there together. The first mechanism is the cortisol cascade. When loss occurs, your hypothalamus signals your adrenal glands to release cortisol, your primary stress hormone. In acute grief, cortisol levels can remain elevated for weeks, sometimes months. Sustained high cortisol suppresses the vagus nerve's ability to slow your heart rate back down after stress, which is why grieving people often report feeling like their heart never fully calms. The second mechanism is neuroinflammation. Research published in the Journal of Neuroscience has shown that grief activates microglia, the immune cells of your brain, producing low-grade inflammation in regions tied to memory and emotional regulation. This inflammation is part of why grief can feel like brain fog, why you might walk into a room and forget why you went there, why concentration becomes nearly impossible in the early weeks. The third mechanism is vagal withdrawal. This is the technical term for what happens when the vagus nerve essentially steps back from its regulatory role. Heart rate variability, a key marker of vagal health, drops measurably during acute grief, according to data referenced by the National Institutes of Health. Lower heart rate variability is associated with poorer stress resilience, which is part of why grief can make a person feel physically fragile, like the smallest additional stressor might break them. The fourth mechanism involves the gut. The vagus nerve is the primary conduit of the gut-brain axis, and during grief, signaling along this pathway is disrupted. This is the biological reason behind grief's most universal physical symptom, the loss of appetite, the knot in the stomach, the inability to eat even though you know you should. The fifth mechanism is sleep architecture. Grief alters rapid eye movement sleep, the stage where emotional memories are processed and consolidated. Disrupted REM sleep means the brain has less opportunity to metabolize the emotional weight of loss overnight, which is part of why grief can feel heavier, not lighter, after a poor night's sleep. Let me try to make this invisible process visible, the way Feynman might have. Imagine your vagus nerve as a thermostat wired into every major organ in your body. Under normal conditions, this thermostat keeps everything running in a comfortable, regulated range. Grief is like someone reaching in and breaking the thermostat's wiring. The heat does not just turn off. It swings unpredictably, too hot and then too cold, because the regulating signal itself has been damaged. Your body is not malfunctioning when you feel grief in your chest and your gut. Your thermostat is broken, and it takes time, real physiological time, for new wiring to grow back. This is especially important to understand after the age of 55, because the aging vagus nerve does not recover from stress the way a younger one does. Research on aging and autonomic function suggests that baseline vagal tone naturally declines with age, which means older adults often have less physiological reserve to absorb the shock of grief. This is part of why bereavement in later life carries documented cardiovascular risk. A study referenced by the American Heart Association found that the risk of heart attack is significantly elevated in the days immediately following the death of a loved one, particularly in adults over 60. Your nervous system at this stage of life is working with less buffer, less flexibility, and that is precisely why understanding these mechanisms, rather than just enduring them blindly, matters so much. So what do you actually do with this information? Here is the embarrassingly simple insight buried inside all of this complex biology. Slow, extended exhalation, breathing out longer than you breathe in, directly stimulates the vagus nerve and begins restoring vagal tone within minutes. This is not a wellness platitude. It is a direct mechanical lever on the exact nerve we have been discussing this entire time. Even 5 minutes a day of slow exhale breathing has been associated in published research with measurable increases in heart rate variability. You are not just calming down when you do this. You are physically retraining the thermostat. But here is what almost no one tells you, and it is the part of this story that changes everything. The vagus nerve does not just regulate your stress response, it is also directly connected to your capacity for connection with other people. Vagal tone is correlated with what researchers call social engagement capacity, your physiological ability to make eye contact, to modulate your voice warmly, to feel safe in the presence of another person. This means grief does not just hurt your heart symbolically. It can temporarily reduce your biological capacity to connect with the people still standing beside you at the exact moment you need them most. Understanding this is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to explain why grief can make even loving relationships feel distant for a while, and why that distance is not a personal failure. It is a nerve, doing exactly what nerves do under extraordinary load. If you zoom out far enough, something remarkable comes into view. The vagus nerve is made of atoms that have existed since the birth of stars, organized by evolution over hundreds of millions of years into a structure capable of connecting your heartbeat to your capacity for love. The same biological wiring that lets you feel the agony of loss is the wiring that allowed you to feel the joy of connection in the first place. They are not two separate systems. They are the same nerve. The depth of the ache is, in a very real physiological sense, a measure of the depth of what was there. That is not just poetry. That is neuroanatomy. Please understand that what we have discussed today is educational information drawn from peer-reviewed research, and it is not a substitute for medical advice. If grief is affecting your heart, your sleep, or your ability to function, please speak with your doctor, because some of the physical symptoms we have described can also signal conditions that deserve direct medical attention. If this explains something in your body that you have been feeling but could never put words to, send it to someone who is grieving right now. They are not imagining the ache in their chest. Their vagus nerve is telling the truth, and now, so can you. Because next time, we are going to look at an even stranger question. What happens inside your body in the exact moment someone finally says, "I forgive you," and why your cells respond before your mind even catches up?